When a dedicated family man vanished without a trace, it wasn't just his wife and 3 children who were left wondering where he was. With no physical evidence and no solid theory to work from, police were stumped by it too. Some fathers will do anything for their family, even if it means they disappear. This is the Case Remains podcast, episode 10, The Disappearance of Robert Hoagland. In many respects, the Hoaglands were your typical American family. 50-year-old Robert had met his wife, Laurie, when they were in their early 20s, both students at the Culinary Institute of America. The two soon fell in love, and it wasn't long before their first son, Chris, was born. Laurie and Robert got married and went on to have 2 more sons together. Photos of the pair show a couple very much in love. With a shared appreciation for food, both went on to pursue careers in the industry, with Laurie working as a culinary arts teacher at Newtown High School, while Robert spent some time working as a chef. But after a while, he grew tired of the unsociable hours interfering with time spent with his wife and his boys. Despite this, his sons remember him as the kind of dad who never missed a concert or a football game. Family was clearly something that Robert held dear. In 2001, Robert changed track and got his license to be a real estate appraiser, work which he enjoyed. 2 of the Hoagland kids grew up and flew the nest, but one of the boys, Max, ran into some problems and was living at home at the time of Robert's disappearance in 2013. Max, who was aged 24 at the time, had struggled with drug problems for a while and had done a stint in rehab earlier that year. He had been living with his maternal grandmother, but had recently moved back in with Robert and Laurie when she could no longer handle his behaviour. Though it was a difficult time for them, Laurie and Robert had been supportive of Max and helping him through his recovery, with Robert even starting a job at his friend's law firm in the summer of 2012, so he could further provide for his family. When Robert vanished, Laurie had been away on a trip in Turkey for 17 days, due to fly back on the afternoon of July 29th. She and Robert had stayed in email contact while she was away, and she had spoken to him the day before she was due home to arrange for him to collect her at the airport. Though she never received a reply to her email, she had no reason to believe that he wouldn't be coming to get her. She landed at JFK Airport at the scheduled time, collected her bags and waited in arrivals for Robert to pick her up. As the minutes ticked by with no sign of her husband, she called and texted to find out where he was. When she didn't get an answer, she assumed he had either forgotten or had been held up somewhere, unable to get in touch. After 2 hours of waiting, Laurie called a taxi to take her to her stepsister's house in Brooklyn and called around to see if anyone knew where Robert was. She texted Robert's boss's wife at around 5:20 in the afternoon. She found out that Robert hadn't turned up for work that day. He hadn't called his boss or responded to his call, which was out of character for him. Laurie asked the boss's wife if she could drive over to check the house, so she waited for her husband to get home and sent him to the Hoaglands, where he found no sign of Robert. When Laurie got back to their house, however, she found his Mini Cooper parked in the garage. Inside the house was his mobile phone and prescription blood pressure medication, which he had to take every single day. His loafers, which according to his wife he always wore at home, were found in the house in their usual place, and his white t-shirt and khaki shorts were found in the wash. The house didn't appear to be disturbed in any way. In fact, at the time, Laurie described it as unlived in. At 7:45 that evening, Laurie called the Newtown police and reported her husband missing. The last known footage of Robert was captured on the morning of July 28th, the day before he was due to collect Laurie from the airport. Judging from the footage, it was the start of a normal weekend morning for Robert. He was seen driving to his local bakery in Laurie's Volkswagen Golf and buying bagels, his usual weekend ritual, before heading to the petrol station to fill the car up with gas. While at the gas station, he also bought a map of the eastern United States and left there at around 6:45 a.m. Robert didn't have plans to go anywhere special, and so the map became a critical part of the early investigation, with police believing that it may have pointed towards Robert running away of his own accord. While a map may seem like an unusual purchase, a friend of Robert's has said that he owned plenty of maps that he kept in his car, as he always used them instead of a GPS. Laurie and Robert had talked about hiking the Appalachian Trail with their son Max as a part of his recovery, so it's also possible he bought the map so they could start planning their trip. Robert can be clearly seen in the camera footage at the gas station, smiling to the attendant as he made his purchases and left. When he got home, he ate breakfast with Max before paying some bills and then playing a few games of online Scrabble on his computer. With Laurie away on holiday, it was just him and Max at home at the time. Max said that at about 11 o'clock, Robert mowed the lawn, where a neighbour also said they saw him. It did look like Robert got finished with the mowing though, as when Laurie came back the next day, the lawnmower was found in its usual place in the basement, his sneakers placed right next to it. While Robert was outside, Max headed out in the Gulf, telling his dad he'd be back a couple of hours later. This would be the last verified sighting of Robert Hoagland. The day after Robert disappeared, Max was charged with third-degree criminal trespassing after being found at a no trespassing zone in Washington Terrace, an area known for drugs and prostitution. Sure enough, when pressed, he admitted to going there to buy drugs. He had been driving Laurie's red Volkswagen Golf, which he told police he was allowed to use, but when they called her, they found out he'd taken it without her permission. He was charged with misdemeanor criminal trespassing and held on $2,500 bond. Just over 2 weeks later, he pled guilty to the misdemeanor charge and was released on an unconditional discharge. It wasn't the first time Max had been in trouble with the law. He'd had a couple of run-ins with police in the year prior to Robert's disappearance. On March 19, 2012, he was charged with interfering with an officer and possession of a controlled substance, for which he paid an $850 fine. On June 3, 2012, he was charged with fifth-degree larceny and paid a $500 fine when he was caught stealing $647 worth of gum and condoms from the Super Stop and Shop at Kings Highway Cutoff. After he was arrested, Max was released on a promise to appear in court on June the 12th. He admitted that he'd been shoplifting so that he could get money for drugs. As he was the last person to see Robert, naturally police were keen to talk to Max about what had happened in the days leading up to his disappearance. Max told them that he'd come home on Sunday night after taking off in the car before noon that same day, but his dad was nowhere to be seen, nor was he there when Max left again the next morning. Max then revealed that his dad had gotten into an argument with some associates of his just a few days prior in Bridgeport, the same area that he'd been arrested for trespassing. The argument was over 2 computers that were missing. Robert had spoken to Laurie via email while she was away and told her that her laptops had been stolen, but that he was trying to get them back. He had locked them in her car so that Max couldn't sell them to get money for drugs, locking it up and then locking the car in the garage. But Max had found the keys and drove off in the car while Robert was in bed. There was an abandoned building in Bridgeport that Max went to so he could find bits of metal to sell, but said that once he got there, he realised that the computers were in the car. He claimed to have taken them into the building, where some people he knew were squatting, and hiding them in there, as he thought that they would be safer in there than left in the car. While he was in the building, however, the laptops disappeared. Max told his dad that they had gone missing, and they went back to Bridgeport together. There, Robert got into the argument with Max's friends, who claimed to have no knowledge of the computers even being there. In Robert's email to Laurie, he said that after tracking down one of the guys in the building, He and Max confronted him with pipes in their hands for protection, adding, "Of course we weren't going to bash him around, but he didn't know that." Robert also told his friend about the altercation, who was shocked that he would have done something so dangerous. Robert clearly felt disappointed that the laptops going missing had happened under his watch. Writing to Laurie, he said, "He needs help, I just don't know where to get it. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to keep him from doing what he's done. I know you trusted him here with me. Damn it." Police were able to locate the men at the abandoned building, and each of them were interviewed in relation to Robert's disappearance. They all denied seeing him since the initial altercation over the computers, and also claimed to have had nothing to do with the missing laptops anyway. Cadaver dogs were used to search the building, and the car Max had been driving was forensically searched, but no evidence could be found in either. After undergoing a polygraph test and providing a written statement that was submitted to the FBI concluded that Max's version of events was truthful and that there was no reason to believe he had anything to do with his father's disappearance. He has never been named as a suspect, and after the statement was given, he was no longer considered a person of interest by police. Robert did make an unusual bank withdrawal shortly before he went missing. He had taken out $600, too large to withdraw in one transaction, but not exactly enough to start a new life with either. When paired with the purchase of the map, however, it certainly seemed that Robert may have been up to something. But a few days later, Laurie got into her husband's safe and found a fairly large amount of cash inside. There's no way of knowing if the $600 withdrawal was in the safe, but if Robert had wanted to get a hold of more cash, he had easy access to some in his very own home. Although at first it looked like Robert had his wallet and car keys on him when he vanished, Laurie found them hidden under a doll where, according to her, he kept them so that their son Max wouldn't be able to get his hands on them. The Hoagland house was thoroughly investigated with numerous police teams and cadaver dogs, but none of them turned up any clues. So it didn't look like Robert had taken much, if anything, with him. But there was some concern by police that he may still have left of his own accord. In 1994, 19 years earlier, Robert had disappeared from the family home. The Hoaglands were living in California, where they had headed without jobs or a place to live. It wasn't long before money got tight, especially with 3 young boys in tow, but luckily Robert ended up finding a chef's job at a nearby country club. After leaving for his shift one morning and telling Laurie not to wait up, Robert didn't come home from work. Laurie soon found out that Robert had actually been let go from the job 2 days prior. He didn't come back for 3 weeks. When he finally walked back through the door, he told Laurie that he'd left out of shame for not being able to support his family. He hadn't made much of an attempt to stay hidden, though. He had taken the family car with him and used a credit card during his 3 weeks away. In contrast, there has been no credit card or phone activity since Robert was last seen on July 28th, nor had there been any other unusual activity in his bank account in the time leading up to his disappearance. With no leads from the house, the car, or from the derelict building in Bridgeport, police turned their attention to areas surrounding the Hoagland home. There's a wooded area about a mile from the Hoaglands, which was searched multiple times, again with dogs. There is a fair amount of woodland nearby, including a state forest, as well as a river and Lake Zoar, a Connecticut reservoir that covers over 3,500 square kilometres. In September of 2013, a couple of months after Robert went missing, police began a search of the lake with the assistance of Newtown Underwater Search and Rescue and the Lake Zoar Authority Marine Patrol. Police performed a sonar search of a 1.5 mile stretch of the lake, but there was no sign of Robert there or in the nearby woodland. Once winter came and the leaves fell from the trees, the forested areas were searched again by helicopter, hoping to uncover something that may have been missed under the canopy of summer leaves, but still there was nothing to be found. On Robert's computer, police found a program that deleted any trace of internet searches on the device. It had been installed less than a month before he disappeared. A search of the computer he used at the law firm he'd been working at showed that Robert had Googled an address in Rhode Island on numerous occasions. Police have never been able to figure out the connection to the address, although strangely, several people have called in sightings of Robert in Rhode Island the same year that he disappeared. When paired to the map that he'd bought that Sunday morning, it certainly paints a compelling picture. But yet again, there was no solid evidence to be found. Some of the sightings have since been discredited, while others weren't able to be confirmed. In fact, there have been numerous other calls to police from people claiming they've seen Robert. Another sighting was reported just one town over from the Hoaglands, where someone who looked like Robert was seen getting into a car outside a store, where the man was also caught on CCTV footage. When Laurie saw the footage, however, she didn't think that it was her husband, the man she'd known for almost 30 years, and his best friend Dave agreed with her. Another call came in claiming to have seen Robert working in a kitchen in South Carolina, the very same state where their oldest son lived. Since Robert was trained as a chef and had spent much of his life working as one, it seemed like it could be a viable lead, but it turned out that the tip had come in from a psychic. Nevertheless, police took his photo around restaurants in Myrtle Beach, but couldn't find anyone who recognised him. Though the internet can be a fantastic tool when people go missing, there are some who use it not to help, but rather to spread their own malicious agenda. Since 2012, Newtown has been synonymous with the Sandy Hook shootings, a tragedy that occurred just months before Robert vanished. For those who believe the murder of 20 young children was nothing more than a hoax, his disappearance seemed like more than mere coincidence. Some believe that Robert was a witness to the hoax, killed by the masterminds to make sure their secret stayed safe, while others have even suggested that he may have been involved. They even went so far as to question the rest of the Hoagland family, accusing them of not being active enough in their search to find their missing loved one, suggesting they might be in on the scheme. In various forums across the web, conspiracy theorists search for links between Robert Hoagland and Sandy Hook School, and unsurprisingly they found some. He'd lived in the area for years, after all. While hundreds of anonymous strangers speculated as to Robert's involvement with a hoax mass murder, Laurie and her son sat helpless, still hoping that he might just walk back through the door. For an already suffering family, these bizarre accusations just rubbed salt into the wound. July 2019 will mark 6 years since Robert disappeared from his home. As time has passed, the tips have dried up and there are no more leads to follow. Christopher, the Hoagland's eldest son, has since completed a master's degree and got married. Sam, the youngest, moved to Australia and followed in his father's footsteps working in restaurants, while Max is reportedly clean and sober. Though life has moved on, the void left in Robert's absence is keenly felt by those who love him. A family forever altered by one single Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much for listening to episode 10 of the Case Remains podcast. You can keep in touch on Instagram and Twitter, where you'll find us with the handle Case Remains, or you can check out our website, www.caseremains.com. As always, if you have a moment to spare, we would love for you to leave us an iTunes review, as it helps others to find the show. Until next time, stay safe.